All right. Okay. Well, hello, everyone. This is Maria Fakes, Executive Director of Adonis Fertility International. We in our regular bi-weekly meeting, bi-weekly webinar. Typically, I have a guest speaker that we have with us, and it's kind of more like an interview format. But today, I kind of want to just give you an update on some of the things that I have learned. And so it's just going to be me. Okay. So bear with me. Really what I wanted to concentrate on. So I just came back from, one of the probably most important conferences that we have in USA in the world of assisted reproductive technology. And the name of this meeting is the Donor Egg Meeting. Okay. So now, kind of like a disclaimer, what I'm going to be sharing, this is more my notes and some of like my aha moments. Okay. It does not, I'm definitely encouraging you, to study the subject more, to look more through the research. But and definitely, seek help of the professionals, and for any specific information about like, your specific cases. Definitely we could set up a follow-up meeting, we could have more discussions. But at the same moment, I felt that, it's still important to share just some of the things, some of the trends that I have noticed, and just some of the topics that have been raised throughout the meeting, okay? Now, that conference was across 4 days. It was packed with a lot of information, many phenomenal speakers. By the way, like that, that conference started, I believe, like almost 20 years ago. It really started from the beginning of like, when medical professionals, legal professionals, psychologists, and just different stakeholders of the industry, when it was just starting development, the whole assisted reproductive technology was relatively young. So people, the stakeholders in the industry, they were saying, gosh, like there is so many things that we see are not regulated yet. There is so many questions that we have, we need to have an opportunity to do some idea sharing. We definitely need to, standardize, that area of the medicine. And we need to have an opportunity for all of us to raise some important questions that are on our mind and also look into the trends. So this kind of has been, I think, the underlying theme. And I joined last year as well, have learned a lot, told my team, and I said, we absolutely have to be participating in that as well. Of course, in addition, we're participating like in European conferences, and also in assisted reproductive association, it's called ASRM. So typically it's in fall. I'll provide you updates as well. But anyway, so want to give you some of the feedback. So the name of the conference is the Donor Egg Meeting, okay? But it's really, so it does focus on donation and not just egg donor donation, sperm donation as well. In the industry, what I noticed, they're calling it third-party reproduction, right? Meaning, that it's other people will be used in addition, to intended parents, possibly to help you complete the journey, whether it's egg donor, sperm donor, or even gestational carrier or surrogate. But still, many topics I felt like they were very universal. Okay, so I'm gonna look through things not just from the third-party reproduction perspective. Okay, so. And another thing, so before kind of jumping into some topics, in the first day, there was an additional workshop. The conference kind of started from, Friday, but, ahead of time, there was opportunity on Thursday. There was opportunity for some very focused workshops, and quite a few professionals have came. So they were very full rooms, so it just provided us an opportunity to dig deeper in some of the topics, and have more like more smaller discussions as well. So I felt like it was very important. Smaller meaning like you have opportunity to touch more people and speak and ask more questions and clarifying questions. What I really appreciated, so one of the founders of this conference, but also one of the speakers and really prominent doctors in assisted reproductive technology, Dr. Schnorr, he kind of, he paused this for a moment and he said, guys, yes, we know that there are still many questions that are unanswered. Okay. Yes, we know there is still, percent of cases that we don't know why pregnancy is not happening, or we cannot help. The industry the science has went only so far. And yet I want us to pause for a moment and to really celebrate and understand how far we have come. Okay, so I want to do that with you as well, because for me that was a huge wake-up call and aha moment, because we really tend to consider it in every problem that we have. And of course it is important, because we're fighting for every patient that is coming through our doors. We want that dream for your baby so much, and when it's not happening from the first time, second time, or some families, maybe have many failed attempts. So like that pain with you guys, don't think that we don't relive it over and over again. Like it's on all of our mind constantly. And it's not just, doctors or supportive support team. It's of course, it's anyone involved in the process, including, embryologists, technicians, everyone who touches that fertility journey in any shape or form. We all have pain and suffering with you, through you. But again, we have come so far from the beginning. So let me just start with that. So, first IVF baby in the world was a natural unstimulated cycle. Guys, this is crazy. So there was, no stimulation used as the way we know it today. And the name of the baby was Louis Brown, was born on July 25th in 1978. As a result of 457 egg collection, of which only 167 led fertilization. Just again, like pause for a moment and imagine. So, for the ladies who are going through the egg retrieval, you know what it means. Imagine. So there was a pioneer before you in 1978, and that was the journey. December 28, 1981, Elizabeth Carr was born as a result of stimulation cycle. So this is the first time, when stimulation cycles have resulted in success. Prior to that birth, it was 41 failed attempts. Oocyte retrievals were originally done via laparotomy. I had to, look it up because I'm not medical professional, right? So I really needed to understand in order to appreciate that statement. So it's a surgical cut into the abdominal cavity. So imagine how invasive those procedures have been on the body. So later laparoscopy was used for retrievals. But still, really interesting, and the doctors were really chuckling about it. They said, okay, just because we have not known so much about reproduction, assisted reproductive technologies, so they said that most retrievals were done at night in the dark rooms and at temperatures 98.6 degrees Fahrenheit. So the doctors and, nurse practitioners, they were saying, gosh, like, yes, like imagine like so many years ago, we were sweating, everyone was exhausted because it's in the middle of the night, patients exhausted, donors, you name it, just because there was belief that we need to do it, and the reason they were doing it, they were saying, gosh, we think that a lot of the, fertilization is happening, when people were making love, yes, typically it's during the night, so they try to emulate, and mimic this kind of environment as much as possible. And only later, all of this development and research have shown, of course, that this is nonsense. But yes, so we, but some of those things were taking place. So we really had to overcome so many issues with all of this, misconceptions and, just limitations of the technologies and our research. And so in the past, also what was important, the industry, so what doctors as a priority were focusing on, developing the knowledge base for assisted reproductive technology. So again, like so many things that we didn't know in the beginning, we had to develop all of this, the terms, the understanding, the research, the methodologies, and so forth. Developing the tools and technologies for IVF. So all of those fundamentals that now really allowing us to make these huge steps forward, including, right, and like one of the people right now on the call, she's actually our head embryologist. Yes, and in one of the meetings she was saying, yes, like, every embryo lab must have, the best incubators, there is the best equipment. Imagine, 20 years ago, also, some of those tools did not exist. So the medications, the culture conditions, the media, so all of that is very important, the tools. And of course, we all were focusing and continue focusing on maximizing pregnancy rates, minimizing, doctors were actually saying, so minimizing multiple pregnancy, and I'll share with you why it was happening at the time. Yes, so this kind of like the focus of the past, but I'll also share with you what right now is being brought, what are we focusing now for the future. So when Dr. Schnorr was sharing his presentation, he said, yes, at one point, one of the fathers of the whole assisted reproductive technology, Dr. Howard Jones, asked him a question. He said, if you would pick the best question to select the best clinic at IVF, what would be that question? And Dr. Snow said, well, of course, the fertility, the success rate, the pregnancy rates, right? And Dr. Howard Jones, he said, well, at that time, he said, no, you would ask, the best question really would be to ask, how many embryos do you transfer at a time? Guys, like right now, of course, like we don't even ask this question because, the technology has went so far. But that was in the days when clinics would transfer, when doctors would transfer 6 to 9 embryos at a time. Okay, can you imagine? So of course, that some of the high risks and the high rates of the multiple pregnancy, but also that's how clinics were trying to get the success rates up, and so we definitely went far from that. So again, like this is just like that gave me such a big perspective and understanding and just really appreciation, right? Like again, I said so many questions we still haven't answered, but we have went and we have learned so much already. And so now we are 82.9% all single embryo transfers. Okay, so this is really like the big statistics. They were sharing it more for United States, but a lot of the statistics hold for the rest of the world as well. Success rates now average 45 across United States, going as high as 70% of some of the leading clinics. And now the big future questions, what we're looking. So we continue looking at optimization of IVF. Huge emphasis now on expanding access to the care. Yes, where there is no geographical limitations and access to the latest and greatest. Of course, lowering costs. Lowering cost is huge. So some of the findings I will share with you, or some of like ideas. So it's really going to both of them, medication and the clinical efficiency. For United States, big question right now is expanding insurance coverage, right? So if you're doing it in United States, it's a big question. A lot of times IVF and different procedures for fertility treatments are not covered. So don't think that it's not on the minds of the practitioners. So this is a big topic as well. And of course, continue improving the success rates, and minimizing the risks of the processes as well. Okay. So many topics then went into the medical side of things. Yes, so it's more like from the medical consideration for the upcoming development. And a lot of idea sharing was happening on the medications, on the cycles, on the protocols, on some of the things. I know that I already, I'm passing it all to our doctors and, to the medical team, and many things already team said that, they already, looking into that, there is some of the things we're waiting for, some of the, evidence data. Right, some of the things that maybe have not shown the results across the board in order to implement, but definitely these are the things that we continue looking, all of us. Now, I'm gonna only highlight, let me see, I'm gonna highlight like 3 or 4 things. This is just something that really piqued my interest, just because a lot of times I'm more on the customer side, right? I'm a link, when customers are coming, our families, our patients, they coming and they sharing their background information, right? The specifics of the journey and everything that they have went through. And I'm more like your front line. And I know when questions appear, I continue going back to the medical team, to our also patients coordinators, and asking so many questions, but because those questions continue coming, like that's what was so interesting to me. Okay, what is some of the perspective? So, for example, there was a presentation by Dr. Kevin Doody. And guys, so when I'm sharing some names, please feel free to go and research more. All of those doctors, they having information that they're sharing. Yes, and also you could, study, look at the terms, and look more into the research. So this is just for your self-education as well, right? And so the in presentation, Dr. Kevin Doody, he was talking specifically about IVM. IVM, I had to also look it up. So IVM is in vitro maturation of human oocytes. He spent a lot of time speaking about, pros and cons. He's thought that he was really trying to, bring back as a summary. And there was also open panel after that with the doctors, with a lot of practitioners asking questions. So his summary was that he would definitely use that as soon as it is approved, through FDA and it's commercially available in the United States, he said that he will, like, hands down use it in the practice because he sees many benefits to it. So, we're not there yet, but because so much discussion is happening, I knew that at one point, these discussions that you also might be having with the teams as well. So what really, in simple words, and guys, a lot of the things I really had to distill for myself in simple words and ask, questions over and over. Yes. But so what IVM, or in vitro maturation of human oocytes, means is when a woman eggs are collected and matured outside of the body. So, right now, predominantly the practice is that, yes, there is a medication used in order to mature oocytes in woman's body, and then there is an egg retrieval, right? And those mature oocytes are collected, and then they further being fertilized and, growing into the blastocyst. So this methodology is more looking into retrieving oocytes when they are not mature phase yet. So a lot of research is already happening. Again, pros and cons, but something that you will see in the discussion. So according to the doctor, he says that a lot of the already clinical study and actual cases are happening in Saigon. And he's saying that what they're seeing, that the retrieval could be done from follicles as small as 4 to 6 millimeters. He said even in some cases as small as 2 millimeters. So it's, to me, it seems like insane. They saying that in their study, they're noticing that the blastocyst development rate is very close to, traditional IVF, right? Meaning, when the mature oocytes are being retrieved. Some of the things that they're waiting, so already they're saying that a removal of designation of experimental designation of IVM is already done by ISRMs in the United States. Okay, so they already passed that step, waiting for the FDA clearance of commercial IVM handling. So meaning, the tools that doctors could use in order to do that very fine and precise retrieval of the eggs of such a small follicles, and then also cultural media. They're saying that the culture media ingredients, separate agreements already have FDA approval, and you could purchase them, but not, the whole culture media all together, all of the ingredients together. So it's not available for the commercial use. And also, physicians training on handling, on retrieval of those immature eggs from such small follicles, right? But at the same moment, when I was talking to some of the doctors and just asking them, okay, well, if those tools were already available today, like, how much training do you think you would need? Would you feel comfortable doing that? Many doctors said that they really think that, they would be completely fine doing it and pretty much no training, because already, they became so precise through other procedures. So yeah, again, so what piqued my interest was that when the doctor was said, yes, would you do it in your practice? He was said, absolutely. So as soon as it become commercially available and approved for use in the clinics, he would do that. He would definitely look into use it with the egg donors. And he was saying that he would do it as a step for all of his patients with PCOS. Okay. So yeah, so I'm definitely going to be watching it, and at least, getting more feedback, and would love to even have maybe some follow-up discussions, maybe webinars with some of our doctors as well, and embryology team. But was interesting to watch that. On a on a health perspective, so, the reason, some of those doctors became really excited about that topic is because they're saying, well, first of all, there is no stimulation needed, right? Because, so it's way less medication and impact on the body. It's very short process. So, let's say if it's an egg donation, or even, the patient who's going through their own, preparation for the egg retrieval, right? Typically the process is minimum 2 weeks, right? The stimulation and preparation for the egg retrieval. So this is all no longer exists, right? If that method is used. So again, going back with the questions that industry is looking, questions that we are being faced for the future, minimizing costs, optimizing the processes, making it as minimum impact on the body as possible. So you definitely could see how this trend is falling into answering some of those questions. Big discussion was on pre-implantation genetic testing. Guys, this question continue coming up. There is no unified solution. There is a lot of pros and cons. What I'm noticing the trend, I've been witnessing in, just even comparing this one conference, from last year to this year. Also, listening some of the feedback from other conferences. And I'm sure maybe you have been noticing that as well. More and more evidence is leaning towards that pre-implantation genetic testing is not panacea to all of the questions and all of the problems. And actually, I was very surprised to see that majority of the doctors and medical teams within this particular conference, they were saying, so when there was raise hand, and who is using pre-implantation genetic testing and who is not, majority said they are not using pre-implantation genetic testing. Okay, the study, so this was doctor who was presenting, that it was Dr. Robert Casper from Canada. Okay, he was bringing a lot of the research, from the different sources. Again, like I'm not gonna, well, I'm not even equipped to share with you, really, dive deep into each of the research. So you could definitely read more about that. But some of the conclusions, I'm going to read what he was saying, that some studies indicate that right. So a lot of study, he said, is indicating that there is a large, high percent of false positive, okay, with pre-implantation genetic testing. So this is one of the things that is really, why many doctors saying we're not really doing pre-implantation genetic testing, we're not validating that. Also, some clinics, they do pre-implantation genetic testing on, it's a narrow testing. They're doing it on the 3-day embryos. So doctors were saying, definitely, let's not do that, because they have evidence that as the embryo developing, so let's say if there is a mosaic with an embryo, right, that embryo has a possibility to correct itself. And so there is a big difference between doing biopsy on day 3 versus, day 5. So, if you do the pre-implantation genetic testing, they're really recommending it to do at the full blastocyst day 5, day 6. Yes, another thing is what clinics are saying, that if they were to do pre-implantation genetic testing, they would do it if you have a large number of embryos. So majority was saying that they would not do pre-implantation genetic testing if they only have 3 or less embryos. Okay, so that was interesting for me to hear. And the conclusion really was that, again, it is a tool, right? It's you totally have a choice to use it, and yes, there is still a benefits of using it, but more use pre-implantation genetic testing as one of the data point when selecting order in which you're going to be transferring embryos. Okay, so literally they're saying use pre-implantation genetic testing to rank embryos to transfer, right? But not as the tool to say, that we completely discarding embryos, or, they're never going to be brought to life or used in the process, more just as an order tool. Meaning, just like, we had meeting with our chief embryologist, and she was saying, yes, so when she's looking at data points, we're looking at the morphology factors, the visual characteristic, the grading of your embryo, right? Something that usually you hear as digit and then 2 letters, for example, 5AA, 3BC or something like that. So morphology factor, and then using pre-implantation genetic testing data as an additional data point for that selection. So of course, embryos that are higher morphology grading, and that showing pre-implantation genetic testing as euploid will be the first, is recommended to use first. Next would be used mosaic. Of course, again, this is more like general terms, does not mean that if you have mosaic, every single mosaic embryo would be used, but more, there still needs to be genetic counseling, consideration on your particular case. But again, in order of the decision tree. And then unemployed only last, and only, doctors are saying if no viable abnormal chromosomes are found, such as 13, 18, 21, and so forth. Another thing that was interesting, clinics, doctors that even was sharing their practice that they typically do not do pre-implantation genetic testing, okay? And especially if you have smaller number of embryos, all of them actually were agreeing that in the situation when you're using a gestational carrier, surrogate mother, that there might be a big push from the side of the surrogate mother to not push, but more like a desire, especially it doesn't apply as much for us, if we're doing surrogacy in Ukraine, but for surrogacy in America, where yes, there is a lot of decision power that surrogate has on the process. It could be her personal wishes that she say, I'm only open to transfer euploid embryos. So this is meaning, embryos that have went through pre-implantation genetic testing. So yes, again, pros and cons, and there is sometimes could be conditions where it would be done because all parties agrees, and because that is additional data point that is required by one of the stakeholders of the process, or participant, I should say, of the process. But anyway, interesting point was what also brought up, and it's something I'm going to be discussing with my team, because I have not personally heard about that, but because it was brought up, was very interesting. Dr. Robert Kasper, he was saying that if you were to do pre-implantation genetic testing, that highly leaning towards at least consideration of non-invasive PGTA. Its abbreviation is little ni and then capital PGT-A. I also had to look it up. So what it means, so non-invasive, they're saying that no potential damage to the embryo from biopsy. And this is something that is more measuring the amount of free DNA, and they correlating it to the probability of aneuploidy, meaning that if so the research is showing, and some of the premises is that if it's euploid embryo, it has less free DNA. Okay, so it definitely piqued my interest. So I'm going to be looking more, and if possible, I would like to even invite someone on one of our webinars to help us understand that topic more, right? So yeah, so again, this is the method that doesn't use the biopsy. So the traditional pre-implantation testing, it's you have via biopsy, you have aspiration of like no more probably than 6 cells of your embryo is being taken, and that material is then being sent for evaluation. That non-invasive pre-implantation genetic testing does not have the biopsy. It's evaluating the amount of, measuring the amount of free DNA. Okay, so and some of the studies saying that it could possibly provide more accurate results regarding the ploidy status of the whole embryo, right? Rather than just information about that selected cells. So to me, it was interesting. I thought that, yeah, I would like to have more information. Another topic, huge topic, and for me, it also was very important because we had some cases, right? And actually, every clinic has cases like that where there is normal semen result for the man. Yes, everything is normal on the parameters that are being looked into, and yet there might be recurring pregnancy losses, or there might be challenges with creating embryos, or there might be, chemical pregnancies and things like that. Yes, and it's something that yes, and something that I was personally constantly was asking, is there anything we could do? What else? What else is available in study? Which direction some of this research is going? So that discussion was extremely interesting to me, and I think I definitely going to invite someone to speak with us as well. But so that was there was a whole discussion about male fertility, and the doctor who was speaking about it. Hang on, give me a moment. I believe is Dr. I don't want to make a mistake. Dr. Turek, Paul Turek is the one who was speaking about that. Really, the thing that he was trying to not the thing, but how would you say? The idea that he was trying to drive home is that sperm matters, right? I mean, we always know that sperm matters, but he was saying that sperm is not as innocent as it may seem be. And that's why he was saying, like, he started his presentation by reviewing, kind of the traditional analysis, sperm analysis, right? And talking about and in your analysis, you're going to have the volume, you're going to have the that would show the quantity, you're going to have the quality. It's a morphology factor, meaning how the shape, what is the percent of normally shaped semen specimens, right, within that collection. And some of the things, again, and he was saying that, yes, so through the research and, so some of the evidence, they were saying that, yes, there are cases where all of it is normal, the parameters are normal, and yet, there is no results or no successes in the fertility treatments. So then my question was, and what I was trying to hear is, okay, so what are the alternatives and what are some of the things we should be paying attention to? He was bringing several things. He was talking about DNA fragmentation, okay, and that this is some of the evaluation, some of the testing, especially for the men who are older than 35, okay? So this is something. Now, the follow-up question was, once you find, what do you do? Do you then recommend aspiration of semen from testicles versus, natural ejaculation? He shared his opinion. His personal opinion actually was that no, he really he likes to stay away from the aspiration of semen from the testicles unless there is like some very particular reasons why they would do it. But he was more advocating for the method called Zymot. And I was interviewing some of the other doctors as well. And so some of them are using that method as well. So I know we're going to be discussing with our team too, and to see, what are some of the preferences. But again, like just because, one doctor is sharing something, let's not just take it and say, okay, this is the only way. Because at the same moment in the audience, there were many clinics that were raising hands and they were saying, but, when we do have, reported DNA fragmentation of this certain percentage, I think they were saying 30 or above, that then they change method on how the semen is being collected. So I think it needs to be revisioned. But another big area that he's saying it's really in his study and everyone that he and a lot of study that has been done in this area, what he thinks that we need to pay attention to deeply is epigenetics. Okay, epigenetics, it's in abbreviation that was used, it was soft inheritance, or it's a microevolutions happening every day. Okay, so the example that the doctor was using was, he's like, okay, giraffe, for example, yes, sort of the study of Darwin of evolution, it was said that giraffe developed this very long neck because the environment, it was not the genetics that it started with that species, but it was an acquired changes based on those environmental needs. And so in the research of epigenetics, they're saying that, yes, the semen analysis, the standard ones could be all normal, but there's so many factors from our environment, including, and it was like a huge slide, like with many bubbles, some things, hang on, I'm even going to let you know, like, some of the things that going into it. Right. Like, for example, use of alcohol or drugs, right? And again, they said it's not like, okay, you a major drinker. It could be a glass of wine randomly or so. Of course, age, toxins, right? Sleep, amount of sleep that you get, stress, and some other things. So all of that, could be influencing in a big ways. The doctor then, when it was said, okay, once the test is done for the epigenetics, what are your recommendations? Like, what you personally recommending? He's a big proponent of dietary supplements. And anyway, some other doctors that I've been speaking to, they had different take on that. But it's something that definitely, can be evaluated, perhaps should be evaluated, and then based on the findings, specific course of action could be selected. There is some already, some very good tests that exist, not only in America, across the world as well. For the epigenetics, the test that was being called, it's called semen QT analysis. And through the research that was found, the summary that I was making, at least, is that the evidence or the results of that test was actually quite accurate. And then once that factor was addressed, then there was a correlation to the increased success rates of the fertility journeys. Okay, so just, yes, wanted to bring those couple things to you as well. Another big topic that is shaking our industry and will continue, and it's not just fertility, guys, it's gonna impact all sides of life, is artificial intelligence. So there was a lot of conversation about that. Now, the whole thing about that we're gonna lose, with more and more use of artificial intelligence, AI, that, many jobs gonna go away. This is actually, including like, in the world of embryology, fertility specialists and so forth. This is not quite the conclusion that speaker and, some of the panelists and some of the discussions are coming to. But what is going to be happening is that it's going to be definitely changing and optimizing and speeding up all sides of fertility in big ways. Yes, so we're still going to have embryologists, we're still going to have fertility specialists, we're still going to have the doctors, that going to be evaluating the results of the data that's going to be coming from AI, but significantly it's going to improve like how fast we're going to be getting this data, how efficient we are, and what we're doing with it, because there is only so much our brain can process, and so many things we could see with the eye. So examples we're using, for example, oh, I'm so sorry, I'm going to mute you. Time lapse imaging, AI and use of the selection of sperm. There was some videos that showed, I thought was like unbelievable. Yes, how the best semen was selected and identified, and how by AI, and how each of them were tracked. So actually, then embryologists have enough time to select that particular specimen. Also use of the embryo lab for the oocytes, and for the use of embryos. so much application, but it's something that, I know that we at Adonis are looking into proactively as well. We just had discussion, with some of the leadership team, with the owners of Adonis too. It's something that, guys, is not happening overnight, but it's something that, I think it's very important to keep in mind all of this positive sides of the development and see how it could be incorporated in order to bring the best value and service to each of you. Yes. Big side, and I have like just 2 more categories. Okay. I hope I didn't bore you. Again, it's been 4 days. I came so excited with all of the information that was shared. There is so much more to it. To me, again, like I'm looking through it as a way of, okay, what are some further discussions I want to have internally within our team? But also, what are some things that I want to bring for you or professionals to really dig deep on each of those topics, okay? So when I'm outlining those for you, this is more like, okay, here's the big level and here is some subcategories. Within each of the subcategories, I see some of like developments that I want to further clarification on. And I think it will be very helpful to you. Also, as you listen to me, or as you're reading some of the information, there is something that you think we should be bringing up, for the discussion, please send me a note. I'm always carefully looking, for all of those trends, and definitely want to provide as much support as possible and have an opportunity for you to speak to the professionals directly, right? So, but anyways, the 2 last topics that I want to kind of bring up, the big topics that are right now, I feel like touching in a big way. Assisted reproductive technology is the legal side, okay? And this is no matter what, it's always have been there, yes? But now with so many new development and some of the things, the trends, including, in different type of families that exist, different, goals, and also the developments in specifically in the third-party reproduction. Yes, so there is a big impact. So let me highlight it for you. And the last big category is, is that type of donation. Yes, so those topics, legal and type of donation, they kind of intertwine. But let me kind of give you a couple subtopics. One of them, guys, this is, it wasn't a specific topic. There was not a specific presentation on that, but it came up a couple times throughout several days. Okay. And I thought, gosh, like it's a very important thing. And I want to make sure that you are aware of that. And you definitely have it on your radar. The thing is, if you are dealing with assisted reproductive technology, if you are dealing with creation of embryos, right, or with any biomaterial, whether it's, you having an egg retrieval and you're freezing the eggs, semen, sperm collection, cryopreservation, or again, you already have embryos created, guys, you must have a will. Okay, have a will. Again, it might seem to be so odd why suddenly talk about it, but there were quite a few cases, and the scary cases, nightmare cases brought up where, yes, like one of the participants, so let's say you're married, or this biomaterial that was created with your partner, even if you're not married. Of course, the clinics, they have consent and different things, but the situation what ran into, one of the family members passed away. Okay, and there was no will that outlines what are the wishes of that deceased party. So then second, in some cases it was wife who passed away, and others it was husband who passed away. But the bottom line is that when the other person wanted to use the biomaterial, whether as a continuation of the process in the memory of the deceased, or just or with the dream to continue creating family, or the person remarried or had another partner and now they wanted to use that biomaterial, they were denied. Okay, so they were denied, so the clinics cannot use it. There is so many roadblocks that are now exist. So again, the best solution is absolutely have a will. don't, like, even if you have only one embryo left, even if you have two embryos, it doesn't matter, have it and outline it. So the wishes of both of you could be preserved in that, okay? So I thought that was very important. I'm definitely going to be sharing that with my families. Another thing is intent. So when you're using third-party reproduction, well, even if you're using, just your own biomaterial, again, just to remind you, third-party reproduction is if you're using egg donor or sperm donor or gestational surrogate, right? So you use other people, but not yourself. Intent, but intent really starts from the moment you have an idea or the need, for the fertility journey. And so there is a whole set of different documents and whole set of different requirements for the testing and so forth, whether you start the creation of the biomaterial for yourself, or in the future, you might be using it with a gestational carrier. Intent is important. Intent is also important with the relationship between all of the parties involved. And so the more you are transparent about those things, the safer the process is for you from especially from the legal perspective. Remember that the moment you're dealing with fertility, no matter how sad it might seem or counterintuitive, you have two big sides. You have the medical side and you have the legal side. There is no way behind that. So being very transparent about intent on why you're doing the journey, how you're going to be using the result of the journey, and what are the wishes of each party involved. It's very, very important, guys. Again, like there were several topics on that. I'm not gonna, I don't even have time to dwell on it, but just remember that the word intent, and if as you're starting the discussions or as you're planning, for the discussions, have that. The next thing is, yeah, specifically for America. So it doesn't apply, for us, assisted reproductive technology for the programs that we're doing in Ukraine, because some of our like surrogacy program, especially for the families that qualify, we're doing in Ukraine. But for the families that are doing fertility journeys in America, so, including with the gestational carriers, including with the third-party reproduction, there is a lot of new challenges that are now being faced for the third-party assisted reproductive technology post-Roe and post-Dobbs environment. Yes, so this is, the two big things that have shaken, the whole industry up. You're going to see, so there is, the professionals that are providing the services, or whether you as a patient or, the legal counselors and so forth, there is still more questions that are there than answers. But just know that this is something that's going to be impacting all of us, and they're going to be, changes in how some of like consents are done, what things needs to be included in agreements and so forth. If you are thinking of doing gestational surrogacy, gestational carrier surrogacy journeys in America, one of the very prominent attorneys saying, guys, like it gives her nightmares thinking about a difference between, they call it red states and blue states. These are the states infertility. Well, this is states on how now is United States divided by the attention towards, sorry, not attention, but the opinion, what are the laws in each state surrounding abortion? Yes. And so attorney was saying that I would really warn you, like she said, it gives me nightmares thinking about some of those interstate journeys. Okay, so these are the questions that I think, again, if you're working with one of the providers, again, like if you're working with us, or working with any other agency or any clinics that they're dealing with those things directly, definitely at least ask the question, say how location of my surrogate and my location and the choice of clinic where we're doing the processes, how it's going to be impacted based on some of those development in post-Roe and post-Dobbs environment. Okay. Another thing that you might start noticing, and you might be scratching your heads and saying, why is it happening? That's again specifically applying for United States. you might see that clinic's going to be leaning more towards freezing the eggs, freezing sperm rather than freezing embryos. Clinics might be going more towards creating only small amount of embryos that you could be using right now in your program. Okay. Is it a good thing from the medical perspective? Not always, guys, not always. There could be many downsides from the medical perspective. Yes, so I think it's very important that whenever the clinic, the doctor, any of the providers, so, as you brainstorming, with your just fertility specialist, coordinator, navigator, you name it, that you ask the questions. If the certain route is being proposed, I think it's very important to understand pros and cons, okay? But for as sad as we were to hear that, from the legal counsel, they're saying they're predicting that that would be some of the trends happening just because clinics would want to protect themselves, right? So it doesn't mean that everyone will be doing it, but I think it's very important at that moment to understand what is the repercussion to your medical process, right? I'm going to give you an example. We have one family that they are cancer patient. They created they did egg retrieval in, I believe in California, maybe not, but in one of the states in America. They did the egg retrieval and cryopreservation. They frozen those outsides, and that's what the doctor recommended them. They've done it prior, lady going through the chemotherapy, right? They were not ready to be going and thinking about fertility questions, she and her husband, but they definitely wanted to have viable oocytes for later use, okay? Now, what have not really been discussed is them, what are the downsides of freezing oocytes? First, so when they came to us, they actually came for us to surrogacy. And they were going to send us eggs, oocytes, to our clinic in Ukraine. Yes. And after, of course, logistically, we could have done it, but we always go beyond just logistics. We had very extensive, conversations with our fertility specialist, with our embryologist, right? And so the feedback was that, because the biotransport is very expensive investment, we said, we want you to, first create embryos, right, at the clinic that froze those oocytes. And only then, once you have viable embryos, with whole certainty that, yes, you could then spend money on the biotransport, right? Because if you're just sending something that, there is no guarantee would it even thaw or not, in essence, you investing a huge amount of money without any results. So we were kind of looking, from different perspectives. We were responsible for them, fiduciary, right? From the spending of their money, we want to make sure that they know pros and cons of their decision, but also from the medical perspective, because for this biomaterial, yes, for those eggs, that pretty much is the only chance for that particular family to have the genetic connection to a baby. On the woman's side, yes, we wanted to take as many risk factors as possible. So family has, so family did follow the recommendation. They thought the embryos at the clinic were not embryos, they thought the eggs at the clinic that did the egg retrieval and freezing of those eggs. They proceeded with the creation of the embryos, and they actually did not. None of the, first of all, quite a few oocytes did not thaw, okay? And then they did not have viable embryos. None of the eggs that did fertilize, which was a very small amount, none of them made it to the full blastocyst, okay? So the reason I'm sharing that with you guys, again, I think understanding some of the trends and some of the reasons, even if some of the trends are more legally driven, right? Like in this situation, we're hearing that this is the projection that legal counselors are seeing that some of the clinics will be doing. It's very important to ask educated questions. And so when you're being proposed, right, to more go towards, freezing, eggs or sperm or both, right? Instead of the embryos, ask questions. What does it mean from the medical perspective as well, right? What are the pros and cons? This is just one of the examples, but I hope I guess my point, I hope you understand what I'm trying to say. So I'm trying to educate you to where you could always have educated questions, right? Add beyond just a solution and recommendation, okay? And then at the end, make a decision that works for your family, but no pros and cons, okay? Yes, another thing that was shared, and it's very important, that's what legal counselors are seeing now all the time. We have seen some of those things as well. Naturally, fertility community, a lot of times, parents would be in some like social media groups. They're going to be asking, what are some of the best practices, what some parents have noticed. And quite a lot of times it could be where, like, one family or two families, they would go through creation, some of the legal documents. Yes, some of the agreements or some of the consent or something. Naturally, they invest money into that, and then they share those documents. Or, people find things on internet, and then they share those documents in the closed groups and so forth. Here's the downside of it, guys. What's happening right now with some of this legislation, right, that is being passing, and that 2024 for assisted reproductive technology, it has been like operating under fire. So many things are changing legally, so many things that we have to, as a providers, we have to rethink, relook. We have to completely revamp, like, consent and, agreements, and put some extra protection into agreements, right? So just because something existed even like, maybe a year or 2 years ago, does not mean it is relevant right now, okay? So I want to really drive that home to you. This idea is that please stay away from just downloading some templates from the internet and moving forward with it. There were so many cases during that conference that has been shared. Okay, guys, those are cases a nightmare. Those are cases that I would say I never ever want any of you to be in it. This is something that, we're definitely watching carefully and closely as far as making sure that when we work with you, with the families, with the donors, with any participants of the journey, that we are protecting you as much as possible, and that we're predicting some of the things that now industry is saying that even in like, couple years or maybe, 10 years or so from now, some of the problems that do not exist or did not exist 10, 20 years ago, they are now coming back with a huge force. So how do we create those documents that really could be protecting you, not just for the questions today, but for possible challenges in the future? What are the risks and how we're mitigating it? And it's something where you investing, not so when you're dealing with fertility, there is a huge investment of your time, of money, but it's also have a huge impact on your future and on the future of your child. Okay, so it's something that you definitely don't want to cut any corners. Okay, so just want to put it out there. Some of the things as far as from psychological perspective, guys, what's happening is the type of families are involving. I don't know what is your background situation of everyone who is right now on the call, or maybe if you're watching it in the recording. I don't know what your specific of your family situation, right? I don't know, are you married? Are you not? Are you single parent? Are you, some same sex marriage, or, any other, maybe transgender families, anything, right? Like you could be coming from all walks, right? So I just want to share some trends, right? That applies to, again, like when you selecting third-party reproduction, you need to start thinking about those things. So psychological perspective. So definitely it's very important to be on the same page, with your partners, or, if you're a single family, just even being with yourself and understanding what are some of the decisions you're making, what could be follow up on those decisions, and what could be impact down the road as well. And based on that, psychological deep conversations and the decisions that you're going to be making, that's when, you know, the legal agreements and some of the paths needs to be done. In the big ways, what's impacting, and it's going to continue impacting the industry with the third-party reproduction, is anonymity, you know, in a way. Let me see how it's said. Let me step back. So just to put it in perspective. So when the first baby was created with the help of the egg donor in 1984, okay, it was anonymous, right? So donor was not known. It was anonymous, in other words, and there was no recommendation to tell children about their origin. I know several months ago we did the meeting with you know, one of the very prominent specialists in this area, and she was talking about the question of telling your child about your origin. Okay, this is something, guys, like 5-10 years ago we never thought about that. This question is becoming very, very important. And you know what have changed that? Yes. Well, first of all, of course, now there is more adult people, you know, who grew up from the use of the assisted reproductive technology, including through the donor egg, donor donation of the, you know, egg, sperm, and also through the gestational carrier. Before that, you know, it was hard to evaluate the impact of that because, you know, there were children, there were babies and so forth, but now more and more feedback is on that. And so through the study, we know that many of them, they wish that they would have been told about their origin, and then there was not such a big secret and stigma about that. But another thing that is really changing the whole situation right now is pretty much, you know, the breaking point became, for example, 2007, when the platform 23andMe and other direct-to-consumer testing, you know, genetic testing have become available. So that's where, no matter how much you want to hide or not hide from your child on whether the donor was used or not, those things will become known, okay? So there is a lot of discussion and a lot of consideration towards leaning and going towards open donation, okay? Open donation or known donors, you know, that's where yeah, you know who the donor, your family knows who the donor. There are certain provisions in the contract. There is a discussion how much involvement you want to have from the donor in the life of your family, in the life of your child or children, and vice versa. Many questions are being raised up legally, many questions raised up ethically, psychologically, but it's something that I think as you're considering the paths, you at least need to, again, ask those questions and be educated so you could better understand what is the best for you. I want to share with you, one of the things that I know that a lot of times that maybe in the past, medical providers would be using, they would say that donors, they absolutely want to stay anonymous, right? But actually that is not so. So I would definitely challenge you to at least educate yourself from the research that was shared with us at least. It actually showed a big percent of donors that were open to be known and open to be part of the larger community of the family, you know, if it's beneficial or between two parties. Want to share an example with you also. One more thing I want to say, it kind of goes back maybe with some of the things I shared about, you know, don't just download templates and don't try to cut corners, you know, when dealing with something so important as assisted reproductive technology. Another thing is, you know, sometimes we're making assumptions, right? We're making assumptions without really knowing, once again, what could be the consequences. There was a very interesting talk, specifically talking about legal aspect of open identity. Yes, open identity meaning that, you know, parties know each other, who is the donor, and donor knows who is the recipient. Okay, so I'm just going to give you an example. When things are being done with assumptions because you think it's more convenient, it saves you money, right? It's something that your friends have done or recommended, you've seen on social media, and it's done and it's okay. Hang on, here's the case. And again, maybe I'm going deep into that, but like to me, again, raised a lot of questions. And so when we're dealing with our egg donors or sperm donors coming from Ukraine, so Ukraine, it's actually on the federal level, it's only anonymous donors, so we have not dealt with those questions yet, but I know that for our families where we're considering the fresh donors within the United States, these are the questions we're going to be reviewing very carefully as far as what kind of agreements and what kind of paths we're going to have for you available, and we're going to be helping you be educated on those paths. So in 2015 New Jersey case, okay, I'm going to read that to you. So Sheena and Tiara Yates of Pennsylvania conceived a baby by way of at-home artificial insemination, only to have the donor successfully file for parenting time and child support. State law currently only protects the rights of donor and parents who choose to conceive by artificial insemination within the confines of a medical facility. Guys, I don't know if it all makes sense to you, but really, like in simple words, what happened is, so the donor was used, it was an open donor used, they had some agreements done, but they thought that it's best that they just do things at home, versus coming to the clinic. The huge things that was as a result of that, donor changed his mind. He said he wants to actually have some of the rights on the child and some participation as a parent, and the state actually awarded that because in that case the state law was stating that donor will be considered only if it was used, so in case if in-home insemination was used, that it was done still at the confines of a medical facility. Many more of those cases were shared. Guys, again, the bottom line is seek help of professionals when you're planning your journey. Okay, making sure you're educated, you ask right questions, you get guidance from the legal perspective, from the medical perspective, from psychological perspective, and you are protected from you really understand what could be impact of some decisions. Okay, so fertility journey could be very beautiful thing if it's done right. Yes, so be transparent about your goals, be transparent about your situation. Many times what doctors and different practitioners within the fertility world was sharing, that remember that word I was trying to drill down about intent, that a lot sometimes families would not clearly state the intent. They would lie about the intent, they would lie about the circumstances. So guys, the more you're transparent about what you're trying to do, right? There is no shame, there is no judgment. Yes, but the more transparent you're about those things, the more possibility it is for the providers, for the professionals to create, to really evaluate all of the risks involved and to create the journey in the most successful, in the most protected way for you and for your future child. Yes, and then another thing that I just also want to end with is that, yes, industry is not standing, and we all actively are looking for ways to continue increasing your success rates, to solving the improving solutions on the challenges that we're currently facing. Many exciting things in development are happening from the medical perspective. So guys, and as a reminder that the industry already, just even looking like 20 years ago, how far we have went. So there is always hope, there is always opportunity. And if you have a dream of a baby, you're going to have so many incredible people fighting for your success. So that's kind of, I want to end with that. And I'm so grateful that I was able to share a little bit with you today and to support you. So if you have any questions, let me know. But otherwise, feel free to follow up with like email or anything. All right. Okay. Thank you so much.